All right, guys, it's been a little while since we did a video. I got two quick things in this video. It'll be a little short one, but just a couple things that have come up here in the last week or so. So we've had this conversation about 8mm trays versus 7.62 trays and how they're physically shorter. Oops, because the rounds are physically shorter. The early guns that were converted to 7.62, they used this spacer. So that spacer was installed so that the rounds didn't bounce around in the feed tray. It essentially shortened the feed tray. Um, so this won't run 8mm anymore unless you remove that block. So this gentleman sent us this gun to build in 8mm and didn't realize that his tray was like that. So it's not that big of a deal. He's going to send us another tray, but that was just something that came up. Figured it would be noteworthy. But yeah, that's an early post-war 7.62 converted tray when they were still using the 8mm parts. A lot of the centerfire system kits that came in pretty recently were this style. They were post-war 7.62 conversions, but they were World War II guns using converted 8mm parts. So the later guns, starting with the MG1, started using the shorter feed tray, and then the MG3 trays were, we've done a little bit of video on that, on some of those differences, but I figured I would point this out. The other thing that's come to light, this is an MG42 59. This uses a unique booster system compared to your standard MG42 style. So this is your booster cone, or your booster nozzle rather. This is the booster nozzle for the 4259. What we found, all the 4259 guns were issued with a heavy bolt and buffer to slow the cyclic rate down. So when they built these guns, they built this unique booster system with more pressure to unlock the heavy bolt and get the action to reliably cycle. It slowed the cyclic rate down, but they still needed the extra oomph to get that extra heavy carrier moving. So they modified this booster system to up that pressure. It's not really an issue in a full auto gun because your firing pin is fixed, essentially. The firing pin does move, but in the locked position, the firing pin is fixed forward. So when the extra pressure comes to unlock that bolt, it's not pushing the primers. Whereas in a semi-auto gun, A, the carrier is much lighter, and B, the firing pin is floating in there. So what we found with this MG42 59 system is the pressure is so high, it's physically pushing the primers into the bolt face and firing pin hole and causing the primers to blow out to the rear. Not the whole primer, because that's supported by the bolt face itself. Let me find a bolt head here. So not the whole primer. You can see that ring around the firing pin hole. That would be your primer pocket in the ground. And this one's got some primer pocket wear, but that's whatever. The primers are physically blowing into that hole where the firing pin goes, like I said, because the firing pin is floating on these semi-auto guns. So what we've come up with as a solution, and this gun will be test number 2, and then I've got 2 more. So we'll have a sample size of 4 to see if this works universally. But we opened up this booster nozzle, excuse me, that's the cone, booster nozzle hole to lower the initial pressure. And we also drilled, not on this one yet because it's not built yet. This one's next in line after I finish this one here. We drilled a hole just past these threads right there to bleed more pressure. We didn't want to oversize this too much, and then the gun wouldn't cycle reliably. So we figured we could TIG weld this hole up if we overshot it. So we open this up a little bit, and then we put another hole here, and that bleeds pressure there, which is still trapped by the muzzle device. So we did that to lower that initial pressure. What we found is a majority of the ammo we tested with, primers were still flowing a little bit into this firing pin pocket, but they weren't blowing out. So we lowered the pressure enough where it still reliably cycled, and it wasn't blowing the primers into that hole. What happens is the primer piece gets in there, jams the firing pin up. You could either have a slam fire issue because your firing pin is jammed forward, or it won't hit after you drop the hammer because the firing pin can't physically come back forward because there's something lodged inside your bolt face. So that's another thing that we just came to light. We had kind of seen it a little bit previously, but sometimes we're moving from one release to the next. Um, we just try different ammo, and if it fixes the problem, we move on. But we found that unless you have really, really hard primer stuff in these 4259s, the primers want to flow and blow backwards. Everybody thought it was pierced primers, that the firing pin was piercing the primer, but it's actually the primer is being blown into that hole. So with the modifications that we did, we were able to lower the pressure enough on the initial test gun that we stopped having that problem. So this will be test gun number 2. As soon as I get there, we'll modify it. And then, like I said, I've got 2 more in line in the build queue that we'll be doing the same modifications to, and see if the modifications are universal or if you kind of got to play with your sizes for individual guns to get them to run the way we want them to run. But that's just something we found. And like I said, this booster system is unique, and all of these guns came with heavy bolt and buffers in them. So it makes sense that the pressures would be higher. We haven't really seen the primer flow and pop issue even when you overgas a standard gun. But something about the way that they designed this, and I'm just a dumb gunsmith, not an engineer. So the way they designed this, that pressure spike is so high on that initial unlock that it's physically pushing those primers into the bolt face. So that's our second little thing. Like I said, today's a little shorter video, but y'all have a good one.